Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me back on.
I wish we could be talking under better circumstances, but in the midst of this really heated political climate, you revealed that you've received some pretty credible threats over the weekend. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I would say that this probably started in regards to, I guess, our doxing of information. I'd say at least over a month and a half ago. So initially, my cell phone was obtained by a left-wing Oppo group, and ultimately, I kind of realized what was happening. So I stopped responding, and I was getting really sexually charged messages and anti-Semitic messages. I bring that up because it's important to note that as members of Congress, what we're finding, and I actually met with Capitol Police over this, but female members specifically, regardless of party affiliation, are the number one targeted for violence, threats, and harassment campaigns. And so I just want everyone to know that it doesn't matter what party affiliation you are, that if you are a female member of Congress, because of the fact that you are a woman, you are going to be put in a position that's likely going to be not a good one. And so that had happened. I obviously had to change my cell phone number, and then it was brought to our attention on Friday last week by a constituent that our information, my home address, was being doxed, and it was happening on my opponent's campaign website or our campaign social media, and they were actually soliciting strangers to send threatening packages to my home. Mind you, I'm a new mom. I have a son at home. And so they were actually soliciting, putting out my information, hoping that people would essentially harm me. And so to say that as a member of Congress, it might not seem like a big deal to people, but think about it as a young woman and a new mom, it's horrifying. And when that proceeded to, we obviously notified law enforcement, but when that came out, I think people tried to poo-poo it. And then hours after the attempted second assassination attempt on President Trump, we received a shooting threat. I can't go into the specifics of what that is because there's an open investigation. But again, when you are being faced with that type of violence and being told or being threatened to be killed, I think that that's a pretty, that's a horrifying thing. And then it happened again shortly thereafter with a different threat that came in. So, I know that I'm not the only one, but what I will say is that because of the rhetoric that we've been seeing, especially leading up to this election cycle, when you have people calling you a threat to democracy, it's not a good time in politics.
Well, hearing that as an American citizen, first and foremost, any political threat, any threat of violence, and political violence in general is just intolerable. So how are you doing, and how is your staff doing?
We're doing okay. My staff has been, unfortunately, since I've got elected, they've been battle-hardened because we have received, and it doesn't make me happy to say this, but I'm one of the most targeted members of Congress. I have no idea why I am. I am. And so we've received threats before, and so they kind of knew what to expect, but it's obviously increased and it does stress them out. So we have security measures in place, and we've had the local sheriff's department, our law enforcement, also U.S. Capitol Police and the FBI working closely with us. But, normal people can just go to the grocery market and shop and be fine, or they can go out to the movies with their family. I can't do that anymore. And so it's been kind of an adjustment for both my family and I.
I know you said you're one of the most targeted members of Congress. Have you been seeing, and it's been ratcheting up, but when exactly did it start ratcheting up? Closer to the election, after the July assassination attempt? What's that timeline?
Yeah, I've seen a drastic uptick, I'd say, in the last month, and to the point of Capitol Police was concerned.
And is there a connection at all, because it happened this weekend, to the second assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump?
I don't know that it's directly tied, but what I will tell you is that when you see the increase in rhetoric, after the second assassination attempt occurred, Hakeem Jeffries had actually posted something about MAGA extremists, and then we were threatened again, and that term was in there. So when you see the rhetoric coming from the left, it does put us in danger. And so what I will tell you is that I obviously do not condone any violence on anyone. And I appreciate that my supporters have been behaving in a kind and American fashion. But the fact is that someone's going to get killed if this doesn't stop. And it's not a joking matter. I know people will say, oh, well, you signed up for the job. You knew what you're signing up for. Last time I checked, in American politics, you don't threaten violence upon people that disagree with you. You debate that on policy. And if you're doing that, that's simply un-American and intolerable.
Something, a sentiment you're sharing now, something you said before, after these threats came to light, is that you're saying it doesn't feel safe to be in politics right now. You're running for re-election, and you're saying you can't even go to the grocery store. Are these threats deterring you from running?
No, it's not deterring me from running. In fact, if anything, it's just making me more convicted in my beliefs that we need to absolutely ensure that people, especially like myself, good people that are principled, will get into office, because this rhetoric has been happening from people that simply don't want normal people like myself in office. I'm fighting for people that feel like they've been left behind, people that are really disenfranchised with Washington, D.C., and simply don't want things to just go the usual way that they do here in Washington. And the fact is that they paint me as a target. The left that's attacking me, that's basically launching a fear campaign and threatening my life, they're not mentioning the fact that I'm the first Mexican American elected to Congress from the state of Florida, that I am the first woman to hold my seat, that I'm the youngest female Republican member of Congress. In fact, I am the youngest Republican member of Congress currently. So by all their standards, I would check all their boxes except for one, and that's I'm conservative and I'm Republican. And so I think that speaks to a bigger issue here.
After the assassination attempt against Donald Trump, from both members of party, from the standard bearers of both parties, there were calls for unity. A, do you think those calls are empty? B, do you think there has been unity in the 10 weeks since the first assassination attempt? And what do you think needs to be done to turn the temperature down?
I think that those people are making, especially, I can speak to people in the House. When you had Hakeem Jeffries condemn what happened with Trump and then turn around and call us MAGA extremists, and then I get another death threat to my office. To me, that just shows that those are empty promises. I think that what needs to be focused on is the policy and not the personal attack and assault. When you have people that are saying that Republicans or conservatives are a threat to democracy, naturally, there are going to be people that believe that. And so I think that's why you're seeing the rhetoric that you're seeing. The guy that wanted to kill President Trump, the second assassination attempt, you can look at his social media. He was a radicalized leftist. I would argue that he's not a blue dog Democrat. That guy was a legit devout leftist. And so those are the types of people that are the ones that are willing to do the crazy things. And so it's a very, I think, important time in our history to where if you are seeing that rhetoric, you need to, A, condemn it, but also to realize that foreign adversaries like Russia and China are using social media in an effort to create fighting between the two factions in our country. And so realize that you might be arguing with someone on the internet, but you have no idea if you're arguing with a bot or not. And those people potentially could be hitting these accounts, especially political accounts, with false information or insults in an effort to cause fighting.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked during a press briefing if President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will stop calling former President Trump a threat to democracy. And this is what she said. She said President Biden, quote, has always been very clear-eyed about this, about the threat the former president represents to our democracy. Just think about January 6th. We have to be honest with the American people when we see those types of threats, when we see that type of rhetoric that led to 2,000 people going to the Capitol. We have to call that out. What do you think about her response?
I think that it was a cop-out response. And I would, if I was in there in the press room, I'd say, well, why are you failing to condemn the people that are literally asking for violence to be brought down on Republicans? Because if President Trump, in saying peacefully protest, caused a quote unquote insurrection, then what about the people that are literally shooting or threatening to shoot Republicans? I mean, it's just an insane double standard. And I think at the end of the day, if you are not willing to accept responsibility for your words and actions, you're not a leader, and you don't deserve to be in a leadership position.
You received threats. You're calling on Americans to tone down the rhetoric. Donald Trump survived 2 assassination attempts, has received threats, and he has a history of incendiary remarks, as we know, since he jumped into politics almost a decade ago. Do you want to see him do the same thing you're doing and tell people to tone it down, bring that temperature down?
What I can tell you is when I was at the RNC convention, I heard him to make those calls for unity. And if you listen to his speech, he was actually pushing a message of unity. And I believe in an effort to calm tensions. But the fact is that a lot of what we're seeing and speaking to really how the press has played into all of this is that the press will take certain clips, not provide full context, run a headline and spin it. And I actually even saw that over the weekend with my incident. I saw a local publication in Florida that tried to make it like I had, according to the tone of the headline and also the article, fabricated this or had been exaggerating. And at the end of the day, I have a child at home. I'm not exaggerating any of this, but I think that they do that because if they have to own up for what they themselves have caused. And I will say, I actually would like to give Chris Cuomo a shout out because he actually apologized for some of the rhetoric that he used because of what's been happening. And I think that more reporters and more outlets need to do that.
In the past few days, I've had two conversations with two different lawmakers, yourself as well as Congressman Tim Burchett, and I asked Congressman Burchett point blank, do you feel safe in light of this political violence, the political threats? He told me no. Really alarming stuff to hear. So what do you think needs to be done for even lawmakers to feel safer?
I would say that as far as our security protocol is concerned, I would say that, there's only 435 members of Congress and 100 members in the Senate. And I would say that right now, because of what's happening, I think that Capitol Police probably needs to assign a security director to every single member of Congress to coordinate their security in district, because I do believe that before this election is over, there's probably going to be another attempt on President Trump, given what's been happening over the last couple of weeks and also the lapse in security from Secret Service. But then I would also say that members are also seeing an increase in threatening messages and also death threats. And as a result of that, I think that local law enforcement needs to work with federal and secure all of these people, because at the end of the day, we're the United States of America. And if any one of us passes away or is hurt, it's not just one party that suffers, it's the country.
Well, Congresswoman, I hope you stay safe. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the conversation per usual.